Shepherds came and knelt in wonder there, seeing him in light beyond compare, and his eyes that told them all love was he, whom men called the Son of Mary. Oh, tell to me this mystery, how a tiny babe in a manger lay. Could so many hearts to love persuade, this holy Son of Mary. Wonderful it was that Christmas day, how from far and near they came to pray, how from far they glimpsed his majesty, whom men called the Son of Mary. Oh, tell to me this mystery, how a tiny babe in a manger lay. Could so many hearts to love persuade, this holy Son of Mary. Could it be that in that little one, Spirit's universal love did shine? If it's true, he lives in you and me, whom men call the Son of Mary. Oh, tell to me this mystery, how a tiny babe in a manger lay. Could so many hearts to love persuade, this holy Son of Mary.
Hello, dear friends, great souls. Welcome to our festival celebration of the Christ consciousness. Let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, humbly and lovingly we bow before you. O gracious Spirit of Christ, help us to feel your presence this morning and throughout this Christmas season. Help us to open our hearts to an experience of your love, to open our minds to an experience of your guidance and wisdom. O dear Christ, We are your children. Lead us back home to thee. Oh, peace. Amen. Well, we're very glad to have you with us this morning. We're going to be having something a little different than our usual Sunday service. This is a festival that will be made up of many different types of things. There'll be music all throughout and a variety of talks. It will be kind of like a Christmas feast where you get to taste a little bit of this and taste a little bit of that as we share the different aspects of the meaning and the truth of Christmas, of the season of Christ's birth. One of the most prevalent of our current day Christmas themes is the Nativity Scene, that tableau that shows Jesus as a baby at his birth in a manger, there with his parents. Often the scene is portrayed in the stable where he was born, surrounded by those that love and respect him from both the physical and the heavenly, the astral planes, because angels are there with him. And of course, his earthly parents, the shepherds, all the animals and the wise men. And there is usually a heavenly body overhead, a star, reigning over the whole divine wintry scene. Now, these days, in stores, in media, even in huge landscape displays, we find this theme mixed with Santa Claus and his reindeer and his sleigh, or with snowmen and icicles and candy canes, or with Christmas trees and all their beautiful decorations and ornaments. But this particular Christmas theme of the Nativity comes from a truism that is rooted in the very foundation of our lives, at the heart of the cosmos. It's a key to the very meaning of our existence. Saint Francis of Assisi is credited with creating the first live nativity scene in 1223 in order to cultivate the worship of Christ among the masses. He was inspired by a recent visit that he had made to the Holy Land, where he'd been shown Jesus' traditional birthplace. And there he was filled with divine inspiration, with devotion, and he realized how powerful a visual representation of the Nativity could be. His original scene's popularity so inspired communities all throughout Catholic countries that soon similar pantomimes were being staged all over Europe. When Christmas comes, many of us want to tune into the deeper meaning of the season. We generously think of buying presents for our family and our friends, or even making individual gifts, special creations, or perhaps we prepare someone's favorite food for them, all imbued with our love. And at this time we think of the beauties of Christmas music and receive inspiration from Christmas church services. And it's good. It's really good to celebrate the birth of Christ with songs and eating together and the exchange of gifts. But it is even better if we can remember the deepest meaning of this holy season. How can we make our celebration of Christmas a real commemoration of the birth of Jesus, the Christ on earth? How can we make this Christmas a spiritual and transformative experience? We do have the sacred keys to awakening the deeper meaning of this scene, this beautiful and deeply symbolic tableau, just as St. Francis did when he invented it 800 years ago. The divine event began many months before our scene takes place. We can imagine that shortly before the time Mary announced she was with child, the three wise men became aware in their distant country that prayers, calls of aspiring love, had been going up from seekers in the land of Israel and from elsewhere on earth. And God responded. A ray of his light flashed out from the heart of infinity, burst downward through night skies of consciousness, and was born on earth for the redemption of mankind in the human form of a Christ, the baby Jesus. Now the wise men felt very connected to this God-realized child, for they knew his soul from lives they had shared together in previous incarnations, and they wanted to find him and honor him with gifts and recognition. And so they started the long journey to find the divine light that God had sent to earth. It was not a quick or an easy trip. It was made by camel and on foot and perhaps on other beasts of burden. They made this long journey of about 2,500 miles. They traveled through what is now Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, across the corner of Saudi Arabia, and then through Syria or Jordan, as they wound their way through plains and mountains and deserts to eventually arrive in the area where the baby Jesus was with his parents. As they came through Jerusalem, they visited the king's palace, and there they queried the king, "Where is this Christ child? Where is this child that has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east, and we have come to pay homage to him." Well, King Herod did not know about any upcoming birth of a king of the Jews, or any kind of king for that matter, and he certainly was not going to let any supposed competitor of his be born in Israel. So, well, that's a whole other story, and perhaps best saved for another time. What is that star? That star that was guiding the wise men on their way. Well, whatever may have been in the sky that Christmas Eve, it was a spiritual star that was leading the three wise men, and that is what they were referring to. This phenomenon of the spiritual star is mentioned here and there throughout the Bible, and of course, it is a key tenet in our yogic teachings. It is described in the book of Revelation in the Bible. He that overcometh and keepeth my works until the end, I will give him the morning star. That star of the east that was seen by the wise men, that inspired them to come to the baby Jesus after his birth, was described as going before them as they traveled westward. Now, they saw it in the east, not because they came from the east, but because they saw it in what is known in mystical traditions as the east part of the body, in the forehead. They were able to see it easily and great clarity, because each of these wise men were accomplished yogis in their own right. Paramahansa Yogananda was very clear that these three wise men were saints, and they are saints with whom we are already very familiar. They are from our own spiritual lineage, and were in fact Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Sri Yukteswar. They made the long trip from India to Judea to welcome their brother on yet another journey to earth, to bring the light to mankind. Well, after leaving the king and setting out from the palace, there went ahead of them that star that they had seen as it's rising until it stopped over the place where the Christ child was. And when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child there with Mary, his mother. And they were filled with joy. And they knelt down and paid him homage. And then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. In his presence, the wise men and even the shepherd folk before them were transported beyond what they had ever experienced before. As described in the poem Samadhi, their consciousness was extended beyond the limits of their mortal frames to the farthest boundary of eternity. And the question the wise men asked the king is the same one that we can ask ourselves if we really want to have a deep and transformative Christmas experience. It is a question that we all are asking throughout our lives in one way or another. Where can I find this babe? Where can I find this Christ consciousness? The wise men were able to find their way to the Christ child because they could follow that star, because they could see the star in their spiritual eye at the point between the eyebrows, that point also known as the location of the Christ consciousness. That star is universal. It's a part of every one of us. It's not just a poetic image. Many, even who know nothing of yoga or mystical Christianity, have beheld it. It is a part of we human beings' astral anatomy. It consists of a circle of golden light encased in a field of blue with a brilliant 5-pointed star, silvery white, at the center. And it is ours to behold. It was to awaken us to this experience that Christ made his journey to earth. Now we too have our own long journey to the Christ. We have our own path to steadfastly wend through our lives until we reach him. And to reach him, to really reach him, we must open this spiritual eye and see beyond it after long practice, to be able to pass our consciousness through it. About 160 years ago in India, Babaji, who was one of those wise men so many centuries ago, quoted the Bhagavad Gita to another of those wise men, Lahiri Mahashaya, when they were planning how to spread the message of deep meditation, of Kriya Yoga, out into the broader world. Promise your disciples, he said, that even a little practice of this inner religion can free one from dire fears, and colossal sufferings. And what is the essence of that inner religion? To paraphrase the Gita, by steadfast meditation on the Christ consciousness, even the worst of sinners speedily comes to me. The masters have truly brought us the keys to awakening that divine consciousness in our own selves. As we meditate during this season, let us draw the consciousness of baby Jesus into our lives. That awareness of the divine is so much more available to us at Christmas time as we relate to Jesus as a baby, as the innocent, the uncritical, the ever-loving and joyful, divine. He is ever available to us if we ask Christ that he be near, permeating our lives, infusing our consciousness with the sweetness of his divine presence. In our meditations, we must never give up, especially in this season, knowing that Jesus, the Christ consciousness, is surrounding us and awaiting us. As the wise men of yore followed his star and merged into the divine light of baby Jesus Christ, we too can experience the bliss of his presence. We need but to faithfully seek his presence through our daily efforts of meditation, devotion, and attunement, and to lift all our experiences up into the light of Christ's love. May the light of Christ shine upon you.
A poor little girl walking in the cold, her clothing all tattered and thin, spied a rich man standing outside a church, outside a church, outside a church. Spied a rich man standing outside a church. The service about to begin.
Please, sir, she said, hear an orphan child. The cold winds of winter have come. I've no place to live, not in all the world. Oh, help me find work in some home.
The rich man frowned, don't you hear that hymn? Good people have gathered in prayer. It's a day for worship, impious girl, impious girl, oh impious girl. It's a day for worship, impious girl. Don't speak here of earthly affairs.
Either then and enter the holy church. The girl wandered down the coast street, and there all at once she beheld a small boy, no jacket, no shoes for his feet.
His clothing was shabby, as worn as her own. He shivered against the closed door. Alas, he cried, none will take me in. Take me in, none will take me in. Alas, he cried, none will take me in. Though I'm starving and cold, for I am poor.
Sing in, she cried, how I feel for you. It's bitter with no friends to live. Here, please take my shawl, it's all I can spare. Though it's shameful, so little to give.
She wrapped him all up in their flimsy cloth, and kissed his cold forehead and smiled. Suddenly a warmth like a summer breeze, summer breeze like a summer breeze. Suddenly a warmth like a summer breeze encircled this poor girl and child.
And a tender voice said, "My daughter, I'm here. No more shall you weep without friend. For in yonder church there's no love like yours. Those with pure hearts their needs I attend."
My child, all men's sorrows would turn to joy if they knew that to share is no loss. For its kindness broadens the human heart. Human heart, the human heart. For its kindness broadens the human heart. I know I who died on the cross. Worship means but love, and my love you found by your gift to me here in the cold. And she found their clothes were now woolen and warm, and the shawl was now spun of fine gold.
Hello, friends. My name is Padma, and I'll be talking about the unity of the East and West, the original teachings of Christ and Krishna. And it is my joy to be able to participate in the Christ Consciousness Festival today. So, you know the well-known poem of Rudyard Kipling that goes, "East is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet," the ballad of East and West. And I remember hearing that song when I was younger and in school as a student. And I remember, leaving with the feeling of, yeah, that is to be expected. The East is east and the West is west, and never the twain shall meet. But much later, when I, came upon my guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, and then listened to one of his talks where he mentions this poem, and he says most people, erroneously, they stopped right there, but they never read what Rudyard Kipling had to say later, that when strong men of the East meets the strong men of the West, they exchange their wisdom, their understanding, and they come to a much better understanding of each other. And such is the nature of our world. So as Yogananda explained, that the East, it was divinely ordained so that East will be, differently patterned. The vibration of the East, as I personally also have experienced it, has a lot of feminine qualities. It's a lot of heart, a lot of love, and very rooted in an inward spiritual aspect. Whereas the West, again, as divinely ordained, so is very outward, has a lot of masculine qualities of, I can do this, the willpower, outward energy, as well as material efficiency. Now, if you look back, maybe not in our lifetimes, but maybe like 100 years back, East was East and West was West, and it hadn't met, at least not in the ages that we are talking about, and there was a lot of suspicion on both sides. If you read the story of Swami Vivekananda, who was the first Indian to come on the American soil. He, and then later Master, they had to face so much of suspicion, harassment. They would see this brown-colored men wearing long hair and weird turbans and strange robes, and they were suspicious. And similarly on the Indian side, same thing. People who would board the ship, it was called Kala Pani, like dark waters, very suspicious, the heathen water. So you're going to the heathen land, and God knows what's going to become of you. When the West brought electricity, the Hindus were very suspicious of it, calling it evil energy. And so such was our world. But if you remember Babaji meeting with Sri Yukteswar in that Kumbh Mela in Autobiography of a Yogi, Master tells us about that meeting where Babaji commissions Sri Yukteswar to write a book that would unify the teachings of the East and West, and also promises that he would send a disciple to Sri Yukteswar who would go to the West to remind West of these original teachings of the Christ. And so we find Master who, in his own words, he said, I was sent here by God and the Masters to bring in the original teachings of Christianity, which are one and same as the yogic teachings of Krishna in India. So we see that the divine plan is to bring the East and the West together. In fact, Master prophesies that the world will see a terrible cataclysm, and one wonders whether we have, already begin to get a glimpse of it already. We are in those times, and God knows what is there in the future. So he prophesies that the world will go through a really difficult time, financially, natural disasters and whatnot, and then particularly America and India will join hands together and show the world out of these difficult times. And so I wonder, is it a coincidence that our Vice President-elect is of Indian origin? Master has come, it's been 100 years since he set his foot on this soil. And today we find not only ideas of yoga, but meditation is becoming mainstream, especially in these difficult times when people are finding themselves, just bombarded with anxiety, depression, fear, and they are all, not all, a lot of us are looking inwards and trying to find tools to help us out in these times. And invariably people are coming upon, I'm seeing meditation being prescribed like left and right by institutes that, before I had never seen that. So we are seeing this kind of nearing of the East and West. Right now, India is under the grip of Western materialism, big time. If you have visited India, you just look around and you see just material desire has taken over India, or has it? Or is there an inner stream, a current of spirituality that can never get lost? And that's what Master keeps on reminding us. If you read his writings, he says, America has too much of a good karma. So even though it will come at the crossroads, perhaps again we find ourselves in such that crossroads, it will always take the higher way, and it will always be delivered on the right side of Dharma because of its very good past karma. And similarly in India, the seeds of great spirituality has been sowed there, and India will keep right on its track of spirituality because India is the guru of the world, he said. So what does that mean for us then? Well, we, the children of these teachings as brought by Master to us, we have been brought up trying to understand the similarity, the unity in these two teachings. Every Sunday, we read from The Rays of One Light, which was written down by Swami Kriyananda, and he actively brings Bhagavad Gita and the teachings of the Bible together and shows exactly how the same thing is being spoken of in both those great two scriptures. So this eternal quest of man for the truth, for God, finding divinity in himself first, and then seeing that divinity all around, and seeing no difference between the divine and himself and in all of creation, seeing that unity. So we find that teaching equally in the East and the West. And for that matter, truth is one and eternal. So we find that same teaching being echoed in any true religion. Anyway, it is, it's professed. It's the same teaching. So Kriya Yoga is a very important aspect of our path, and I think we believe that Kriya Yoga is going to be that bridge that brings the East and the West together in the future. And that has already started. In fact, the work, Ananda's work in India, because Master came to the West, he never had time to go back to India and teach his own teachings there. And so it was on Swami Kriyananda who went back and taught it there. And today India's work, we hear, is growing in leaps and bounds, and that Swamiji had prophesied that India's work is going to overcast all the other work put together. And so we find that if Kriya Yoga is at the center of our teachings, then perhaps Kriya Yoga is also going to be that bridge between the East and West. And then I came upon this reading in Ananda Europa, is that perhaps even the Kriya Yoga process, some of you who know this, as we inhale, that inhalation, which basically is the rise of the astral energy, that could be compared to the coming up of the sun in the east, and then as the energy descends down on the other Pingala Nadi, it could be compared to the sunset that happens in the west. So in that aspect, maybe we can compare how Kriya Yoga is reflecting both the east and the west. And I found it really beautiful, and I wanted to share it with you. So I ended there on that note that yes, God has made the East and West, and they are different, but the teachings are the same, and there is truly no East or West. We are one and the same children of God, and we hope to actively share our teachings. The East and West becomes commingled into one family of God in that true love for God. Blessings.
Cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, Jesus Christ, come. Cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, Jesus Christ, come. Cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, Jesus Christ, come. Cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, Jesus Christ, come. Cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, Jesus Christ, come. Cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my cloud-colored Christ, come. Oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, oh, my Christ, Jesus Christ, Namaskar. My name is Arnav, and I'm so happy to be with all of you today. This is a season of giving, of forgiving, and being grateful. We can feel the vibration, particularly this time of the year, is higher than normal because we feel the presence of Christ in our lives. And this year has been a year like no other. So we are ever more grateful for all the blessings that we have in our lives. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity to talk about Christ consciousness. What is Christ consciousness? So as I was meditating on this particular topic, the word that kept coming back to me was equilibrium, stillness, samadhi. So Christ consciousness, as we see, is a reflection of the cosmic consciousness, of the cosmic energy vibrating in everything, the Om behind creation. But on a material plane, it is a state where emotions are not playing havoc with our souls, where the ups and downs and exuberance and despondence and tragedies and pains and pleasures and all of that are not impacting our state of mind. So Christ consciousness is actually that particular state where we are completely still, but the soul has been completely unshackled from all its material tanglings, from all the dazzling dichotomies of Maya, and is moving at God's speed towards the Father, towards infinite truth. It's a connection at the point between the eyebrows, the kutastha, which actually helps us expand our consciousness so that we can be on this highway in our journey to achieve nirvana, nirvikalpa samadhi, and to be one with the infinite bliss. So when we are talking about equilibrium and stillness, the next thing that comes to mind is, how does it feel to be in that state of complete tranquility, of complete attunement? So when Jesus came, he showed us the way of him being the Son of man, the Son of God, reflecting in his physical cosmos, his body, the eternal vibrations of Om, and spreading that throughout humanity. So it feels like light. And light, again, in itself has its dual meaning. So it's light, as we know, versus darkness. It's light, as we know, versus heaviness. So we feel light. And like a helium balloon, as Swamiji has said in many of his books and articles and talks, we feel our souls rising, energy rising in our spine. And when we are in that complete effulgent light, there is no darkness. So as I was thinking about this, a funny story came to me. A play by an Italian playwright. He was a Nobel laureate. His name was Dario Fo. Many of you may have heard of him. And this is, the play is called The Virtuous Burglar. So it so happens that, he goes in to steal, he's a thief, in one of the very important person's apartments, like a politician. And suddenly he made some wrong calculations and these people come in. So the politicians, their friends, and all of them just walk into the house and he's figuring out what to do. So he finds a grandfather clock and he goes and hides inside the clock. And then he can hear all the adultery, all the conniving, all the, treacherous discussions and, everything that we can think of the material world outside.
and then the clock strikes 12. And he sees the pendulum hitting him once here, once there, and it's constantly hitting him. It's a very hilarious, satirical scene. And I thought that, our soul is like that. It's being hit by this pendulum of consciousness and subconsciousness as we are stuck in this material world. And it's getting tired. So what does Christ consciousness do? It actually gets us out of that delusion. It's almost like the soul gains an escape velocity. It is basically able to pull away from the gravitational pull of the material world. And once it's able to do that, it moves towards God. And Christ consciousness is that Om vibration that we see, that devotees see. If we are able to even try to reach that state, as Master said in Autobiography for Yogi, the experience with cosmic consciousness when Swami Sri Yukteswar touched him above the heart. He felt this, constellations being formed and, fire becoming firmament, and he felt like he could feel the center of the empyrean. And that is what Christ consciousness does. It's like, if you drop a rock on an ocean, right? What happens? It just drops and disappears. Similarly, darkness will just disappear. The light is so strong, the vibrations are so high, the darkness does not really have a chance to survive in that higher state of vibration. So Christ consciousness is an embodiment of the cosmic consciousness. And what did Master give us? Master gave us Kriya Yoga. That's our path to actually attain that state of Christ consciousness. It's a surefire way to reach the infinite truth. And the only way we can reach that state of tranquility and light is through relaxation, through God-given, Guru-given meditation, as Master said in his poem Samadhi. So Jesus showed us the way, how we can actually be constantly in tune with God the Father, the Sat, and constantly being attuned to God, constantly being attuned to Divine Mother, constantly being attuned to the ultimate truth, is what Master called exhaustless bliss. So reaching the state of Christ consciousness is inevitable. And I would quote from the autobiography in finishing this talk. Master said, we find his instant guidance, God's instant guidance, and his adequate response to every difficulty. He does not give us more than what we need. He gives us exactly what we need. And the final quotation from chapter 14, I think, is from the AY. Human life is beset with sorrow until we know how to tune in with the divine, whose will and right course is often baffling to the egoistic intelligence. God bears the burden of the cosmos. He alone can give unerring counsel. As long as we tune into this divine intelligence behind everything that we see, and as devotees stay steadfast on the path to attaining the truth, I think we will be moving step by step towards that eternal state of bliss of Christ consciousness.
We'll play for you now, Vieni Presto Gesù. So open your heart to Christ as you sing with us.
Vieni presto Gesù, Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni. 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 Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy love. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill
Friends, I'd like to share with you from Yogananda's Whispers from Eternity, demanding forgiveness. And this is one of his longer prayer demands. So I invite you to take it as a journey within your own heart to resolve and let go of any past hurts that you've had and to allow them to dissolve into the great ocean of Christ's love. Demanding forgiveness. Teach me to behold myself in others. As I try to explain away my own faults to myself, or if I correct myself, I do so silently. So teach me, Lord, to accept, understand, and forgive others, and sometimes only quietly, to suggest to them how they might correct a fault if they wish so. Through kindly tolerance, while shunning the blind brutality of impatient egos, let me lead all stumbling ones, stubborn in their erring, to Thee. Help me to see that Thy light shines equally everywhere, on good, diamond-bright souls, and as much so on coal-black evil beings. Guide my understanding and invigorate my powers, that I may transform darkened, hate-filled minds into sparkling gems, which fully reflect Thy impartial wisdom rays. Long ago didst thou wipe away the soot of desire and indifference covering my own soul. Long now has it shone with thy light. I discovered wonderingly that I had always been thy child. Enable me now to wash all souls clean with thy love, to see and treat even dark souls as thy children also, and as my very own sleeping brothers. Thy light hides within the most gloom-shrouded soul, waiting to be revealed and appreciated by all at last. They themselves can bring out their hidden splendor by self-effort and by the good company of those who are seeking thy ways. Whenever I meet such a self-punishing soul brother, help me to treat him softly with patience. Make me ever ready to help all those truth-repudiating souls who now wish to be awakened. For thou givest even to the condemned murderer a fresh chance to be better, in a new and unknown body, perhaps in a new environment with new influence to mold him. Even so, teach us to offer shelter in the haven of our forgiveness to the world forsaken. O Spirit, may the sunshine of our love, which comes from thee, dispel the chill from all error-frozen souls. Thou dost eagerly wait to reveal thyself to entire worlds if they want to emerge from the sea of wrongdoing. Thy silence before those error-steeped worlds demonstrates thy patience and thy ever-proffered forgiveness. Teach us not to deny the sweetness of help even to those persons who try us bitterly with wounding words or even with blows. Without any expectation of them whatsoever, let us help others to help themselves. In the meantime, let us ever forgive them, even those who turn against us because we, respecting their free will, have ceased to help them. Teach us to forgive even those who most offend us, forgiving them inwardly first, and then, as we find them receptive, forgiving them outwardly. Help us to scatter fragrant flower petals of forgiveness and return sweet speech for every sour word, smiling love for all hatred, heartfelt kindness for people's anger, and brotherly or sisterly goodness for every injury. May we feel that even the most inky dark soul is immortal, that he is only dreaming imperfection. Inspire us to awaken him with divine forgiveness to the consciousness of his eternal, celestial sonhood, of his inherent purity, and the deathlessness of his soul. It's a great joy to be sharing with you on this topic of forgiveness, Christ's greatest miracle. We know that Yogananda talked about Christ being on the cross, and that after all of that persecution, condemnation, the crucifixion that he went through, that he could utter those words from the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. This is an unfathomable state of consciousness, the Christ consciousness, that can emanate such strength of heart amidst such suffering, that can radiate outward to others. How is it that Christ could perform this, his greatest miracle of forgiveness? Well, it wasn't through human love. It was through the power of divine love. You know, driving through Los Angeles, as I'm sure you've experienced, you see a lot of billboards and advertisements. And I saw one recently. It was a church. It wasn't an advertisement. It was a church advertising their services. And it said, "God loves you." Well, I think that's apparent. God, of course, loves us. That's not the question. The deeper question is, do we love God? And how do we love God? How can we cultivate that type of divine love, that type of Christ consciousness that allows us to forgive those that persecute us? It's like Jesus Christ himself said, it's easy to love your friends and your family members. Even the tax collectors do that. For us to have heroic love, for us to be examples of Christ's love, it's the universal love of Christ's consciousness. And we are trying to cultivate that in our daily lives, to have mini miracles, if you will, every moment of our waking life. And one simple way to do that is to say you're sorry when you mess up, when you make a mistake, to try and mend that wrong with your brother or sister. I had a funny experience just last week that I was here at the East LA Center, and like everyone in Southern California, we're closed down to the public, like most businesses. And a woman knocked at the door, and she only spoke Spanish, and my Spanish is bad, and my Spanglish is not much better. But I tried my best, and I said to her, "Lo siento, pandemico, we are closed." And so she turned away, and I closed the door. And we were talking through masks as well, so even if she spoke English, it would have been hard to hear her with the traffic in the background. But then Dharma Devi had the bright idea, and she said, "Well, why don't you ask Aaron to speak with her?" Aaron is part of our Spanish ministry here. And to my great embarrassment, as Aaron talked to her, but I didn't explain, but she had this doTERRA box that she was holding. And I know doTERRA because it's essential oils that Dharma Devi has used. And I know that they have this multi-level marketing sales model. And having grown up with a father who is, who put the hard press on, shall we say, to close the deal, I've always had a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the door-to-door salesperson. So I thought that that's what this woman was. I thought she was an essential oil salesperson. But it turned out, to my embarrassment, that she was actually part of the Spanish ministry, and Aaron was speaking with her about outreach within the Spanish ministry. And I just said to her, I said, "Lo siento, señora, I thought you were a doTERRA salesperson." And Aaron translated for me, and she laughed, and we laughed together. But admit when you make a mistake. And you don't always have to ask for forgiveness to others. You also have to exercise common sense and discernment, because, lest other people in their anger hold it against you. The important thing for us is to practice that openness of heart to Divine Mother, to the great ones. They are watching our heart. It's so important for us to remember this during the holy season. God does not mind our faults. If Christ could utter that miracle from the cross, think how much love. A saint once said, if you knew how much God loved you, you would die for joy. We should meditate on these truths, that God's love for us, it's so overwhelming. It's not something we cannot comprehend it with the mind. It's something that we imbibe with the being of our soul. And so it's important for us to cultivate this love for God inwardly, and to ask of Him that even though, like Yogananda has that chant, still I see the path through thy mercy, though my sea is dark and my stars are gone. No matter how dark and how much you feel that you're in despair, Lord knows the world is in a great state of despair and trying and turbulent times. But this is the time for us to lift our heart again in strength and to come, like that Christmas carol song, to fall on our knees because we are so overwhelmed by the love of God that it brings us to a state that no matter if this is something that Swami would meditate on and he shared with us, and it's so inspiring, I want to share with you, that to think of all the lifetimes that you have been truant, that you've wandered from the path, that God's love, that Christ's love has always been there. It's like that story that Yogananda would tell of St. Anthony when he was in the desert in that tomb and he was meditating for years, and the satellites of Satan came to test him, and they were shaking the tomb and jackals coming, and then Satan himself said, "I've come to show you that your Lord, your God does not exist." And Anthony just said with one more strength in lifting his heart, he said, "No, my Lord, my God, my all does exist. Come to me, my Christ, my Lord." And in that moment, Jesus appeared to him. And Anthony cried out, "My Lord, over all these years I cried out for you. Why didn't you come to me?" And he said, "Anthony, I have always been there. I have always been with you. God has been with us throughout eternity. This universal divine love is our birthright. So when we feel that our feelings have been hurt and we've been wronged by our brother and sister, let us exercise that demon from our being and kick out that state of ego consciousness that separates us from our brothers and our sisters. For we truly are one. We know this on our deeper soul level, yet we have to learn to practice it. And we cannot win the love of God until we win the love of our fellow brothers and sisters. It's like Yogananda said, you cannot win God's love if you haven't learned to win God through others. And it's not winning them on a level of personality, of placating likes and dislikes. It's loving God through other people, serving God through others. It's realizing no matter how they treat you, you have the power of Christ's love to radiate and share with them. Swamiji said something so profound and moving. Your love is a heavenly gift. It is yours to give. No matter how other people treat you, no one can take the love of God from you. And no one can take that power of your own choice and free will to say, like Anthony did, "No, my Lord, my God, my all, I love you. And I love you in others, and I will serve you in others no matter how they treat me." Yogananda has that beautiful chant to Divine Mother, "Take the dust of each one's feet, even where mother sleeps." You know, this world, it's bewildering. And the one thing that will resolve all of our complexes and all of the complexities of life is the soul and prime simplicity of God's love. Let us resurrect that universal Christ love within us, not just this holy season, and not just every day of our lives, but every waking moment, so that our very heartthrob will be like the Sacred Heart of Christ on the cross, emanating that miracle of ineffable stature, saying, "Oh, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I am yours eternally, and I am here to serve you, and that your will may be done in my life and in all your creatures." God bless you this holy season and beyond.